Alex, it's good to have you back. It's been a couple of months, basically, more or less, 6 or 7 weeks almost. And yeah, on this occasion, I think it's possible to say, with regards to one of our mutual passions, football, the shit has hit the fan. But yeah, you've got some really interesting thoughts on this. And so I thought the best way to do it was to just basically let you get stuck in and then we'll attack it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I'd like to just we've been listening a lot in the last few days to what's been going, reading a lot. I was glued to it all of Monday. I'll have to be honest with you, because I just felt this kind of real disappointment, and just a massive, massive disappointment, as I'm sure so many people did. And I kind of wanted to kind of step back and just look at it rather than just kind of go, the world's fucked. I just wanted to step back and just say, okay, so what's going on here? Let's understand it. Everything has a logic at some level, right? Let's try and understand it. So yeah, I just want to make a few points about it. And I think what's interesting is how it then relates to how the system works. And I'm talking about a system of our society and things like that, and where it's going and how this is a reflection of it. But let's so to kick in. So first point, abhorrent. It's awful what's happening, and it's being led by real people who, if you look into their profiles, you wouldn't be surprised at what's happening. So just to give a couple of examples, Kroenke, of Arsenal. You go to St. Louis and you talk to people about baseball there. People are, they're discussing, they don't want to know. There's a whole city there, a whole geographical area has been turned off by that person. Doesn't
it make you think about this process of due diligence, though, that the FA or the Premier League does when it comes to accepting new owners? Doesn't that make you think? So didn't you go to St. Louis and ask questions?
It does. I mean, you wouldn't even have to go to St. Louis. You just go and Google it. I mean, it's not even like, we're in the information age. If you want to find out something about someone, you generally can. So there's no, due diligence. That's an interest. I think due diligence is a great thing in concept, and it's only as strong as the interests of the people who are doing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it could be, it could be done. Absolutely. You would have found everything. But let me give you a couple more examples. The Glazers, same kind of story. If you go out with someone and they ask to borrow your car and they sell it and they say they need it for funds, but they've got some nice clothes and you'll both look better as a result of it. If that doesn't send warning signals to you at the start of your relationship, then I worry for you. When I heard the Glazers were buying the club with debt, and that debt would be paid by the property. I mean, it was just that is just robbery. It's just incredible, and we've seen the effects of that. So the Glazers, again, there's no surprise there that they shouldn't be let off anything, but there's no surprise that their behaviour is absolutely the worst behaviour. And then I think my favourite example is Elliott Management. Do you know Elliott Management?
No.
No, Elliott Management.
These guys are Spurs.
No, Milan. They're the ones that bought Milan, and they're a vulture fund. And so for those people that don't know what a vulture fund is, it's basically like an investment bank. It makes investments, and they buy up debt. They buy up debt, and just for one case in point, they buy up distressed debt. They buy up debt that's very unlikely to be paid back. People are in very difficult positions to pay it back. So it's cheap, right? It's not good debt like a mortgage. It's cheap, and they go after it, and they use the maximum power of the law just to absolutely screw those people to make sure that those people pay it back. In this case, Argentina, the country, and then some of their distressed national debt. And literally the things they were able to do, just to give one example, a ship, an Argentine Navy ship docked in Egypt, I think, or somewhere like that. They were able to have that impounded and taken as collateral to as a guarantee for the debt repayment. So this is a small fund, obviously managing billions of pounds, holding a country to ransom using one of their navy ships. So, you know, for me that was a very interesting insight, not only into Elliott management, but into just how far we've allowed the idea of kind of the free market and market forces to get to the point where a group of people purely interested in profit can just really, I mean, stamp on the wounds of a country. You know, Argentina, I don't know how much you know about Argentina, but it's been in an economic crisis for years. Yeah. The poverty there is unbelievable, and obviously with that comes corruption. And you've got a vulture fund that can come in and just make, again, millions and millions and hold that country to ransom. So these are the and
there's no recourse through international law. I guess it's just
no, they did it through international law. They took Argentina to I think an international court or something like that. That they didn't do that with bandits and machine guns. They did it through a legal process. The legal process helped that small fund hold that country in destitute poverty to ransom on the debt. That's their business model. That's their business model, because distressed debt is cheap. So anyway, so there we go. There are some of the players and some of the profiles of the owners, i.e. the people that make decisions at these clubs. So I think that's the first really important point, because you know, there are people saying, oh, fuck Liverpool, fuck Man United, and this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, who are we talking about here? We talking about Man United, the players, the manager, the fans, the people that have committed to them, the people that support them, or even some of the board members that have been there a long time and have supported? Or are we talking about a couple of people that hold the most power and other people like Ed Woodward who are compliant? And so I think that's really important, the first thing to say. So there should be no surprise that those type of people are taking these type of actions. Second, you know, I think the implication here is a destruction of quality at the national level. So in the same way we saw the devaluing of the UEFA Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, we're going to see a devaluing of the Premier League. And I was just thinking, like, where can this go to? And I was thinking, actually, you know, you could get global clubs that have more weight than national entities. And you know, people might not be able to perceive that the World Cup could be in peril, but you know, these clubs, just to give you a kind of give you a kind of idea of how big they could become. Think of the kind of contracts handed out by baseball teams. You know, 300 million over 10 years or something like that to their star players and things like that. Now, baseball has got a tiny reach. You know, there's like Venezuela, Japan, US, and a few other countries. Football is everywhere. So you turn your Real Madrid or Manchester United into a club that's playing midweek matches in Hong Kong and then others in other places. Their bases will just grow and grow and grow. So the funds are just unlimited, and no one can get enough of the football. So there isn't, and people say, oh, the fans won't stand for it. And the people that say that are kind of, they're thinking about what the situation was 20 years ago, which was where a grand proportion of the income of the company, i.e. the football club, came from the fans in England and so on. Like, just to give you an example, I think it's Arsenal's corporate seats earn much more than all the other season ticket holders, one-off sales. And also those one-off sales of tickets are people who are going to come into the club shop and buy. So there's massive, massive, massive economic incentives. Again, and this is a free market. This is what we espouse when we talk about capitalism, right? And I'm not against capitalism for that matter. We'll come to that. So a couple of final points. I think you'll have global clubs. That's the implication. So they won't actually have any real country connection. They'll lose that. They'll like they greenwash. They'll pretend to have a connection, but they won't. And then, yeah, then let's not make any mistake about what is happening here. What they're saying. This is purely about economic gain and to secure uninterrupted profit and wealth building. Look, Arsenal, I think, is one of the best examples. Why? Because they don't even challenge for the title. They're not interested. When I say they, the owners, I'm not talking about the players and the manager. They're not interested in winning the Premier League or winning the Champions League. That would be a bonus, but they're not going to invest that jump of money for that to happen. They're happy securing Champions League qualification until they didn't. And now they've been on a downward spiral and everything. So they're one of the biggest beneficiaries, because they're a substandardly run club that will now get, that will now be given a free pass for being a substandard club. And I want to come on to so those are the points about the Super League. I don't want to say too much more, but I think it made me think, what are the tenets of capitalism that are at force here? So, I was thinking, like, well, I don't know. I'm going to take a pause. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, no,
because I've made those points on the go, and I don't think I should move on to another subject before I've passed it.
No, we'll come to it. I mean, I've also tried to sort of think about capitalism specifically and uniquely through the perspectives that you've sort of presented there. But looking at it again from the footballing side of things, you mentioned Arsenal and the lack essentially of investment in the team, or at least the investment has been there only insofar as it facilitates their ability to qualify for European competition. So
up until 4 years ago, because they haven't qualified, have they?
Well, they're in the Europa League, as in.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, they're in the Europa. Yeah. Okay. Fine, yeah. Their bare minimum. I understood their bare minimum to be the Champions League, but maybe it's actually not even that. Maybe it's just the Europa League. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Europa League, you obviously, it's perhaps you get paid half the amount of money that you would get paid had you qualified for the Champions League, but it's still a certain amount of money.
It's a good point. Yeah.
So, I mean, they're there, they're in the semi-finals now, and, if they win the tournament, then they are qualified for the Champions League next year. So, I mean, they have invested a certain amount. However, if they then switch to this supposed European Super League, it is incumbent upon them to spend a certain amount of money in guaranteeing the quality of their team, because thereafter, if they do not do so, nobody's going to watch their games. As in, they
why not, Zach? Sorry, you're talking about the Super League. No one will watch Arsenal's games in the Super League if they don't improve from where they are now. Let's say, let's agree where they are now, they'll get battered every week. Are we more or less? Yeah. Okay, good. We're there. Oh, we're not battered, but they'll be towards the whipping boys' end, right? Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United.
Well, look, I mean, with the exception of United, because up until now, unfortunately, whenever United has played Arsenal over the last couple of seasons, they haven't gone after them. Whereas other teams have gone after them tactically and have battered them. United haven't battered Arsenal, so I don't think it would be fair to say that United would necessarily do so. But
but they'll perform poorly. I think we can. And your point is, if they do that, then they won't be watched.
I think that there is if I had to choose between watching a super team play Arsenal and two super teams play one another, the chances are I'm going to switch to the two super teams if I were inclined to watch the damn thing anyway.
Okay, I see your point. Okay, absolutely, there'll be more tempting games, but the point is there's only 20 teams. Like there'll be only a certain amount of matches, and there's a global audience. So I 2 points about this. One, I don't think they'll have that issue because there'll be too much glamour around it. And two, each team will get a share of that 3.5 billion that gets, and I think that equates to something like 150 million dollars,
based
something
upon,
like that or more.
Well, based upon an article that I saw today, it's not quite the same. They have tiers. So the top tier will get 300 mil, the second tier 200 mil, and the third tier 100. And then thereafter, the additional 5 teams that will periodically be sort of adjoined to the list will get less than 100 mil for their participation for that particular round. So
yeah. All right. So I mean, yeah, I think I think generally they will prosper if they're there. They will prosper as a financial entity. I don't mean as a kind of Arsenal Football Club, but as a financial entity. I think that's a guarantee, unless there's some kind of massive coordinated response. But I don't know, and I don't feel like I'm kind of a good kind of perspective to kind of like give my opinion on that. I don't think I've got like that knowledge. But I see it. I see this going ahead and gradually eking out the Champions League, B teams or second teams in the Premier League to kind of blood people for what becomes the big league, and then just more decision making powers from those people, and just like the most ruthless financiers in the world at the helm of those clubs.
Okay, I know we want to go into a bit more of an analysis of the sort of the capital element, the capital element that is there, that inherent therein. But just so almost jumping to the end before we come back again, do you actually think this has a long-term lifespan? Do you think this has a long shelf life?
Yeah.
Okay. I disagree, but fair enough. I
mean, why don't you tell me one, two, or three core reasons why you think it won't, and then maybe I can respond to that with what I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for a start, there is a certain disenchantment with the way football is run anyway. Now, people still have a certain romantic notion with regards to the localization of their team. This is our team. I know that you have fans are all around the world, and they say, Liverpool is my team. We didn't do well, but you still need to be able to maintain a relationship with those individuals, and I'm not sure, by withdrawing further into elitist competition, that relationship is so easy to maintain. Thereafter, by coming away from the more standard structured football tournaments, you lose an element of prestige. I think
coming away from standard. Okay. All right.
So no longer registered with UEFA and FIFA. I think there is a certain prestige that comes with the history and traditions of these tournaments. UEFA has been around for a long time. FIFA has been around for a long time. Being associated with these historical bodies is something special. Being thereafter associated with an investment fund kind of doesn't have the same meaning to it, if you know what I mean. And what else is there? I'm not sure they will be able to continue to attract top footballing talent, because I like to believe that when a football player starts his or her career, their top aim is to play for the national team. Their dream is to represent their countries at a World Cup, at a European Cup, at a South American Cup, at an African Cup, if you know what I mean. The young player that comes into the game, that is their dream. And with this European Super League, I am hopeful that UEFA and FIFA, after the current generation of players, that they tell future players, you will not qualify for playing for your national teams if you now pursue a career there. These guys are there. We don't want to punish the current players. That's unfair on the current generation, but future generations, beware.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So there's 4 points there. Okay, I'll just very quickly each one. Disenchantment, maintain relationships with the local community and the local fan base. I purely in economic terms, that base is irrelevant now. It's completely irrelevant. That's it. Like, if you culturally, socially, I couldn't agree with you more. Economically, they're irrelevant. Like, I haven't studied the finances of the clubs, but Asia Pacific is the growing region. America is the growing region in terms of football uptake. People are getting into it. There's a massive growth there. So like the complaints and things like that of people at local, like myself, I consider, want to uphold the kind of values of what was before. Just there isn't that, other fans will have no problem paying and keeping that going. So it's, as an economic decision, it's completely irrelevant for them.
Can I just come back on that point?
Because
because for example, when Özil complained about the treatment of Uyghurs in China some years ago, Arsenal's contract was cut in China. And so therefore, obviously they lost out quite a bit of money. You're talking about an Asian market. That Asian market is going to include countries such as China. It's going to include countries such as Thailand, Indonesia.
China's the main country, but that's
so
the biggest market in Asia, but go on.
So therefore, the clubs that go there are going to be told no politics. And we are talking about 12 clubs which are from Europe, and so therefore supposedly represent European values. If one of these, for example, the English clubs goes out there, and in China some particular event has occurred and the football club doesn't say anything purely because they're expecting a huge bonus to arrive from China.
Of course,
Isn't it possible that the British government will say, we're going to freeze your bank account because you are doing business with a country we have suspended trade relations with? Isn't this a possibility that may occur, which does perhaps counter the economic model?
I think that's, I would love to think that might be the case. But, there is genocide being committed right now with the Uyghurs. There's, China on multiple levels, and, I'm not a backer of the United States imperialism or UK arms sales. So this is to all of them, but China is committing atrocities, and people are still doing business there, and trying to find a way to manage the balance between speaking up against that. I think 80% of the world's cotton comes from that region, so we're buying it. It's happening. I don't think China will care. They're too big of a market to care now about individual brands dropping ties. So basically, the brands need China more than China needs the brands. Just as football fans need their team they've always supported more than the team needs them now. And yes, the government could take action, but if the government starts taking action for companies trading with China, UK completely breaks its trading relationship with China. And again, UK leads. Now that we're a tiny little miserable old fish in a massive global ocean, we need all the help we can get. We don't have the bargaining power that the European Union has. So, we have to do deals with the devil, will be the mentality, especially of this government. So, so no, I don't think so. And as far as, I don't think I need to comment on the feasibility of injustices, atrocities and things like that impacting the decisions of those owners, unless there's some economic impact, as you said. So the second one, coming away from established tournaments. Look, 1992 Premier League didn't exist. Now it's like the most established tournament, the Champions League. That's a new tournament. The European Cup was the old tournament. So no, I don't think. I think actually prestige will come where the best players are playing, and that's what's happened with the Champions League. That's what will happen with the European Super League. If the best players are week in, week out playing in that league, there's the prestige. If the oldest clubs' names are playing in that league, there's the prestige.
But these are natural reincarnations of existing competitions. As in the old Division 1 became the Premier League, as in the same teams play at the same stadiums in front of the same fans.
Yeah, but these will be the same teams. But instead of West Ham, you've got Barcelona.
Yeah, but
you've
it's a different
It's a different competition. Yeah, I get you, but again, Zach, like from your, like I hate it. I can't stand it. Like I completely agree with all those views of like, I don't want to watch Real Madrid Arsenal every week and all of that, and it's sickening. And I want to see Leeds go and draw with a point or fucking knock them out. But again, the majority economic interest comes from people who just are happy to see that every week. They don't know what came before. And then
yeah, go on.
So I'll just on this one. So UEFA and FIFA. Also, UEFA and FIFA, like, and this was going to be the last point in response, is like, you know, they don't have a lot of them are mixed up in this. So, you know, at the moment they're all up in arms, but they, you know, when FIFA goes to Brazil and makes drinking Budweiser or alcohol in stadiums an obligation as part of the World Cup ride, alcohol in stadiums in Brazil is banned because of the violence that came, and they've made that. You know, what kind of a company does that, let alone a global organization? FIFA is as dirty as you know, many of these members. They're the same kind of people in different suits. Note that UEFA's come out heavily against this because their interests are in direct competition. FIFA are still looking at this. They haven't come out with big statements. So they're looking at the possibility they can still survive and this, that, and the other. You know, so they're, you know, there's not a lot of courage there. And then just the last thing you wanted to say, you said attract top football talent. I think that's the only one that I think could have potentially a bigger impact. If the World Cup stays in its current form and is not affected by this, it's not deleted or anything like that, hopefully that attraction to play. But then again, Zach, who needs two more? 20 teams times a squad of 20 players. That's 400 of the best players in the world. Imagine if the World Cup starts putting things on these players, on these clubs, they'll say, okay, have a World Cup without the 400 best players in the world. Sorry, that's a bit discriminatory. Have it without the 200 best players in the world. What's a World Cup without them? Who needs two more of that?
Yeah, but I mean, you know, on the other hand, there have been occasions when top teams, Italy didn't qualify a few years ago, England didn't qualify in '94. There have been occasions when very top important teams have not qualified for. Holland didn't qualify.
Every World Cup there's been at least one.
Exactly, and it wasn't any less dramatic, shall we say? And also, just to come back to a point that you made earlier, you know, obviously as a Manchester United fan, for me, the most dramatic memory I have in the Champions League was when they turned around the 2-1, the result against Bayern Munich in '99. But if I were not to be so blinkered, shall we say, with Manchester United, the best recollection that I have of a football game in the Champions League is Bayern Munich against Norwich City, when Norwich went to Munich and won 3-1 or 2-1 or whatever it was. And I think it was Jeremy Goss scored a peach.
Jeremy Goss.
Remember?
I remember. Ginger curly hair.
Yeah. You would never get that level of drama. Yeah, and I mean, the other day I watched it on YouTube again because you know I was telling my son about, mate, Norwich beat Bayern Munich, and he said, no way has Norwich ever beaten Bayern Munich.
Promoted. Yeah.
You know.
Dude, it's funny you say that because 2 weeks ago when I watched Paris against, who did they play? Bayern. Paris against Bayern. I have to say, like, when I just watching Paris, like with this trigger called Mbappe, Neymar, and Di Maria, like, oh my days! Like I was just like, please, couldn't we just spend more time with Mbappe on the ball? I just felt like a kid again, honestly. And I get your point about that kind of drama. I mean, that kind of drama, I think, is stuff that newer fans can't appreciate. Like newer fans in other countries and things like that, because they can't. There's such an established dominance in most of the leagues in the world, and they like the thing of the FA Cup replay, and then someone knocks someone out, and you know that's amazing. And we love to see it. Everyone loves to see that, but that's a part of our culture. That's not a given thing, you know.
And these are things.
So again, it's who's going to miss it, Zach? Who's going to miss it? I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like an arsehole who's like this heartless thing. I hope to everything. I'm just trying to say, how could this happen, and then how could it be stopped as well, and stuff.
Yeah, as it when it comes to excuse me, when it comes to the stopping it, yeah, I don't think it can be stopped. But I thereafter flip to the other side of the argument because I am, uh, you could say, incandescent with rage
Yeah.
at the idea of it. I will not watch it. I will cancel my subscription with whichever organization is providing the coverage, um, and I will watch something else. Yeah, because I actually feel one of the reasons why I also mentioned the first point, the disenchantment point. Um, you know, when football was simply a sport where you had passion for the sport and you loved your club, it was incomparable with anything else. Nowadays, it's simply one form of entertainment among a list of other forms of entertainment. And
Yeah.
with games consoles, with streaming services, with audio books, basically at your fingertips. I say audio books because I love listening to audio books. With all of these different forms of entertainment at your fingertips, you don't have to go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
How big a deal is 90 minutes of football on a 2 or 3 daily basis? For me, they've got
Yeah,
too
I don't know.
much. There's too much entertainment competition there, man. As in, people can binge watch Suits or whatever all weekend. I couldn't care less anymore. I don't want to watch the European Super League. I want to watch the
Yeah.
next episode of Suits, for example.
I think your point about like there's a power, we have a focus, and like, so some people say, oh, I couldn't stop eating meat, for example, or I couldn't stop watching football, and it's like actually we're a lot more powerful than that, I think. And it was interesting, Zach, because after being really disappointed and really let down and just really just trying to read up as much as possible, I just kind of said, okay, Al, you're going to have to do like this kind of really just look at it and just say like, how much do you need this in your life? Basically, I haven't come to a decision because I want to see how things develop and I want to think about it a bit more. But there was a part of me that was like, screw this, man. I stopped playing football seriously at 16 or 17. And so from then on, I made a decision I wouldn't try, and I was, a little semi-pro youth club and stuff like that. And I was like, I had a little bit of a dream to kind of play professionally. And with at peace, I made a decision. I was like, I can have football in my life and I don't need to play professionally. I can do other things. And that's what I'm going to do. And I've been happy since then. And now it's like, and I was just like, I was like, I know I can be happy without football. Like, so there's a part of me like, oh, could I start playing again? Like just, to give myself my football fix. Could I watch local leagues here in Bolivia a bit more, just focus more on that? And could I just leave it completely and just say, fuck it? And then, and there was a part of me that's like, yes, I could do that. And I'm still, I'm still thinking about like this, I'm talking about the Super League, right? And there's another part of me that's just like, fuck you guys. Like, why should I have to leave? Why don't you guys fuck off? All this. But like you said, just coming back to your first point, which was you don't think it's stoppable. I don't think it's stoppable because I think it's a process that's been in place for, more than 25 years now. And it started around about the time maybe of the Premier League, maybe even before that. But, we did a deal with the devil, and Manchester United, club we both supported, or you support, and I stopped supporting a long time ago just because I realised I was just a glory hunter. No, I don't. I realised, what I realised? I realised I was just more passionate about beautiful football than I was about any club. But anyway, but we benefited massively from that. Premier League years, dominance of Manchester United and Arsenal, buying in the best players, biggest club in the world, and benefiting from that, and then getting bought. And then I think, the Glazers took over, but the only reason they could take over was because we were a public entity. And I think, again, you'll have to check the finances, but I believe when we became a public entity, I believe that our finances went through the roof, and we had this massive economic power over so many others. But we didn't realize that that left us vulnerable, and look what happens. And the opposite case in point is what would have probably been labeled as socialist decisions from Dortmund and Munich, that now are like, oh look, they can't just completely, maybe they'll go into the Super League, but they won't go in there without the fans having a say.
No, apparently today they unequivocally said no. Bayern Munich has said we are not going to be in the European Super League, and that's it.
And Zach, what happens when we're here in 2 years' time talking? We're a year and a half into the Super League. It's been a massive rampant success. I don't know. Germany has always had like social principles that I think are higher than other. I think there's always this community. It's strong. It's in football. So maybe it will withstand. But yeah, I think it's inevitable, like you, that this happens, unless. I was literally thinking it would, like someone said, nuclear war, like that kind of level of literally deconstruct. No, it's not deconstruct. When you like break up the banks, it's like break up those football clubs.
Yeah,
like literally destroy them. It's like when you want to kill a host, you have to kill the host sometimes to get the disease out.
Yeah.
And you're not going to buy these clubs out. They know how much they're worth now. But if you kill the brand and you make it worthless, I know this sounds extreme and it sounds ridiculous, but just think about it for a second. If you do that, then they haven't got a product anymore. And then you build up something else. And so it's something along the lines of AFC Wimbledon or the MK Dons, but at a level that's supported by a conglomerate of different of national leagues, governments, fans, literally saying we are going to dismantle the operation, like work permits, things like that. But I think you would need a revolution from the actual players themselves. And and you're talking about players like an Alexander Arnold in prime of his game, world at his feet, years to come of greatness, probably on a 3 or 4 year contract, and you're saying to him, okay, you might not be able to play for a few years or something like that. And I can't talk about what kind of a sacrifice that would be. But literally, I think the only way you get these people out is you destroy the club and then you build it up from foundations again, which sounds ridiculous, but then we're in extreme times.
Well, I mean, I would say that sometimes you can become so big as an entity, you end up eating yourself. I think that's essentially what has happened here already. It's just, the rot has set in. They just don't realize it yet.
But how do you see? That's such a good point. And tell me how you see them eating themselves.
Well, I think they've already killed their own brand. They have already killed their own brand, because in the eyes of your average fan, and the average fan will make up the majority of fans, these people are elitist parasites, which are feasting off the product that they love. And by feasting off that product, they are essentially killing the product. And therefore, I think the rot has already set in. They're essentially dead without knowing it yet. They're walking around with the cancer inside them. It's going to take them out in a few years' time, but by then it's too late.
I'd love to. I couldn't agree more. Parasites. Your description. When you say that they've lost the brand, that they've lost all of that, they've lost it with a certain group of their clients.
Well, let's look at it.
Call them clients, and their clients. That's 10 to 15% of their clients, Zach, in terms of economic revenue.
Well, but this is the thing, though, because you're still maintaining the capitalist element, which is fine, because you have to put up that
argument. But that's what they
survive.
If they have the money, they survive. If they've got profits, they're in good shape.
But the thing is, what is it that makes Barcelona or Real Madrid special? What is it that makes Liverpool, Manchester United, Manchester City special? It is that within their individual nations, they have developed a history of success. They have developed a class of supremacy. They have reached a level of excellence. You are now cutting them out of those individual nation bodies that have held them up. Because I mean, you know, it's basically Spain which holds up the status of Spanish teams. It's
They
England.
probably argue it's the opposite, that actually Real Madrid and Barcelona, they argue that they're the ones that bring the viewing figures into the league.
Yeah, but the Spanish,
true. I think it's 50% of the country is either Barcelona or Real Madrid.
Yeah, but it's the Spanish people that hold them, that provide them with that automatic level of acceptance, of enchantment when it comes. If you talk romantic, if you're a Spanish person and you speak romantically about a football team, you're going to speak about, oh, do you remember that 56 Real Madrid team? Or that 64 whatever Barcelona team, you know, it is within that national complex relationship that these teams are special. You are now,
and that's how I see it completely.
Yeah,
that's how that's how it is in my eyes. You're like, what makes it special? But the problem is, it's like, who's answering the question? Because if it's me or you or anyone in Europe or something like that, then that's their answer. But if it's a kid of 25 who's in Beijing with wealthy parents that only had one kid, and they want a glamorous football club to support, like millions of people across Asia and other places. I'm not saying there aren't kind of deep-rooted, hard, you know, fans that really understand the game. There are, but there's millions more that just, you know, will pay the money happily, VIP, this, that, and the other. And those are the opinions that are now matching to the clubs, and that's the thing.
I think the only way
I think they can continue. Yeah, go on.
The only way this will, in that sense, the only way this will work for the individual teams is for them to make the individual football players within those clubs like absolute icons. As in, we are going to turn these individual players for the 10 years of their careers into gods. And that's the only way they will be able to achieve it. But in doing that, once again, they will end up killing themselves. I cannot see it working, and I'm a bit closed-minded in this perspective, but I do believe when you strive for that level of affection from people, your star burns quickly, is what I think. And this is basically the case. They are going to get a lot of money, but then the star's going to burn quickly, and who's going to pick up the pieces?
It's not all going to run perfectly, that's for sure. And I think that, an interesting thing, there was the Athletic did a piece on Messi, and like, it's how much is Messi worth to Barcelona, because obviously it came out that he was being paid like this amount of money, and they actually calculated that, you know, he was earning them more than he was costing them. And one of the things they said was, like, you know, there's been doubt now that if he plays for Barcelona next season, because of contracts and all of that we know. And they have some of their key sponsors are coming to an end this year. And what they've done is they've done two contracts. There's a contract with sponsors like Beko and all of those that based on Messi staying and Messi leaving, and there's something like a 50% difference. And so one thing that's quite interesting is that the people in Asia and things like that, they love Barcelona because of Messi. They don't love Barcelona because of its history and things like that. Barcelona, yeah, they had this prestige, but that prestige is nothing without the current best players in the world. You know, a few years ago, I mean, look, Man City. Look at Man City. They've got massive fan bases now. They've got no history, like no history that compares with like Man United or Arsenal.
Liverpool. You don't want to mention
but they've got the players. Liverpool. Look, Zach, I'm at peace. Since I started just loving the beautiful game, I've loved watching Tottenham under Pochettino, Liverpool under Klopp, Leeds. I can watch those with pleasure now. I don't care about club allegiances, honestly.
I'm like you.
It was partly because I was suffering so much under Van Gaal and Mourinho with Man U. It was just like, I'm not watching this. This is utter shite. Like, and you know what the hurtful thing was like doing utter shite with great players like Marcus Rashford or Anthony Martial. You know, if Martial was playing under Guardiola, my God.
Let's just make ourselves a short-term question then. Do you think this Super League will get going this year?
Yeah, probably. I think it probably will, because there's two things that make me think that. One, they've already taken preemptive legal action to preempt any legal action from the authorities. They knew what, there was a leak interview. No, not a leaked interview. Like I think the Guardian or someone, or the Athletic, got to speak to one of the board members in one of the top 6 clubs who remain anonymous and blah blah blah. And he was saying, like, there's disagreement, and the clubs were well aware of like the extent of the backlash that would happen, and so that was all prepared. So they've taken preemptive legal action. So from what I understand, the very little I understand is that will mean that legal processes taken out against all aspects of this idea will be held up in courts and things like that. And someone made a great point, that look what happened with Man City and the financial fair play. Basically, the way they won against real proof of like wrongdoing was they put the billions of an oil state into legal costs, which UEFA couldn't hope to compete with. And that's what they do. They can just do that. They can hold it up. So I think that will be one thing. And then the other thing in terms of the practicality is, if UEFA keep playing, trying to call their bluff, i.e. going, oh, we're going to throw you out of this and this, that, and the other, they'll only serve the competition that then comes. Okay, cancel the Champions League this week. Fine, no Champions League. Next season, all right, well, okay, we're not in the Champions League now. Cool. This is a new one. Real Madrid are going to add, they're going to add this to their trophy number. Like they've got 12 or something like that. So if they win the Super League, they'll be on 13. It's a continued, like as the European Cup was the Champions League. They've thought this through. So I think it will go ahead in the short term, and I think they need it to, because I think one aspect of this kind of is it disaster capitalism or something like that. It's like that shock and awe tactic. It's like force something through. What's that saying? It's easier to apologize than ask permission. Yeah. And so if you just smash through something legally, marketing, and take the advantage of the opportunity. So at the moment it's perfect. People are suffering. They're distracted. They're scared. They're not able to organize. They're not able to, it's absolutely perfect for dictators, as in Cambodia and other places, China and things like that, United States, as well as the mafia running these football clubs.
Cool.
So, yeah, I think, yeah. What do you think?
I think so too. I think come August it's going to start, because I think that otherwise, if they wait a year, they're giving the established organizations opportunity to change things around and to stop it from happening. If you do it quickly, as you say, UEFA, FIFA, they just don't have the time to respond. They either accept the way that it is, or they go towards a far more extreme solution, which is chucking them out. And I don't think they're prepared to do that yet. They might cut off their own, cut off their nose, spite their face. And just one other thing, I mean, JP Morgan, their business is in assessing risk, and they've put 4.8 billion behind this. What does that tell you? It tells me that I know very little bit about the history of JP Morgan. I couldn't trust them as far as I could throw any of their buildings.
Oh, sure.
That's a different matter. All right, Alex, what can I say, man? It's great to actually talk about purely a passion that we both share in abundance. And I'm also looking forward to our analysis of capitalism in the next session, which won't be too far away, I think.
Yeah, I've got my notes ready. I look forward. And I watched, I think 4/5 or nearly all of, or pretty much all of the Michael Portillo, putting capitalism on trial.
It was never on trial. It was fixed. Yeah, whatever Mr. Portillo says, that was never on trial. But anyway, we'll come back to that.
That's a great starting point to agree on there. We've got to find some disagreement, mate. Come on.
Yeah, I'll do my best. I'll do our best. All right. Alex, enjoy. Thank you. And chat soon, man.
Yeah, take care, Zach. Thank you.